Okay, to answer you and answer all of the hundreds, literally hundreds of emails, I actually should have made a folder so I could show you the size of the folder. But when I mentioned that I had problems with these old games, running them specifically under Windows 3.1, all of you, there's hundreds of you, send in messages saying that, oh, I know how to get Windows 3.1 to run on DOSBox or on VMware, stuff like that. I know. I've done it. In fact, I have a build of it that runs with a legal copy, by the way. I actually dug out my old copy of Windows 3.1, so it's fine. Windows 3.1, not really the problem. The problem with that is we're talking about a shitty shell that sits on top of an old operating system that's being emulated, and we're using video and sound drivers that, even when they worked, were pieces of shit. So what I'm saying is, let's say I get Windows 3.1 running, and it doesn't even really run all that well, but I do it, and I try to run something like Star Trek Klingon or Borg, or something, any one of those really old games that would only run on Windows 3.1, Johnny Mnemonic. The problem is they all use Apple QuickTime, or even a perverted proprietary version of QuickTime, like the Duck TrueMotion player. You just don't emulate that, and you can't install it. So, even when it worked right, it didn't really work that well, and it would crash all the time, and it just wasn't that good. So, yeah, Windows not really the problem. It's just really weird software that's trying to interact with each other, and so you're using old software, emulated, mixing it together, and sometimes the new software wants to work, and the new software really shouldn't work. It's really complicated, but yes, I know about VMware, I know about Windows 3.1, I know about DOSBox. That's how I do most of my stuff, is DOSBox. And like I said, believe me, I prefer it when it runs under DOS instead of actually, even Windows 95. If I can find a DOS version, I prefer to do it, because DOS is actually much more predictable, and DOSBox is a damn good piece of software right now. But that's not what I started this vlog for. What I started it for was to review a couple games, and I suppose I should do one in particular first, and that's Mass Effect 2. Now, the reason I didn't do this one was because I got to a little late. I actually didn't start playing it until about a week after it came out, just because I was doing so much work. But when I started playing it, my review was... I felt it was kind of redundant, because everyone had already said everything that needed to be said about this game, and you can kind of boil it down to one word, and that's streamlined. It's a very good game. I enjoyed the hell out of it, and I'm actually in the middle of a second playthrough, which I almost never do, but it's a very fun game, and I think the key word here is that it kind of took everything that was kind of lame about Mass Effect 1 and pulled it out, and they made things relatively simple. Sometimes maybe too simple, but it's hard to complain about that when they stripped out the stupid Mako tank segments. I never liked that. They never really worked right. In fact, I think they kind of shipped that with the Mako tank thing kind of unfinished. You ever notice how you could never shoot something if your tank was on an incline? Even if your crosshairs were right on it, it just didn't work. They fixed that. Now they replaced it with the scanning mode, and yes, the scanning mode sucks. On the other hand, I'm not sure how much you can really complain about the scanning mode not being fun or being boring, because you're essentially scanning for ore and prospecting, and that's not an activity that you necessarily denote with fun and exciting. I know it's a game and you're supposed to enjoy yourself with the game, but at the same time, you're working in stellar cartography at the moment. It just didn't seem like I should be like, yes, mineral scanning, awesome. I think the worst things were the really repetitive hacking and code segment mini games, especially the hacking, which is really just concentration. And it was fast and swift for what it needed to be, but it never really evolved. And in fact, I think the hacking thing could have been cut out entirely, and you wouldn't just keep the focus on the action. It would have been much more streamlined that way. In fact, that's all I thought. I thought the code mini game was okay. It was a little more involving, and there was a little more risk for catastrophe to happen, but I like that. I actually found that the game was a little too easy, so I really had to crank up the difficulty to, I think, hardcore mode really early on, actually. I for some reason I usually play through with a mage character, or in this case I always play through with an adept. I carried over my adept from the first version, my renegade adept, who I kind of played him like a Psychor operative from Babylon 5, kind of very very Jack Bauer, do what needs to be done. I almost never play the bad guy, but in Mass Effect I really love playing the bad guy. For some reason, a lot of games kind of have this really, really goody two-shoes version and then a really needlessly, prickishly evil version that just kind of curses out people all the time and just murders people for no reason. For some reason, I find the Renegade version of Shepard to be a lot more reasonable. Reasonable is not, I do a Sparta kick on a guy out through a plate glass window. That's not reasonable, but you can kind of understand the behavior a lot more. I'm not making much sense, but yeah, not much more to say beyond what's already said. I don't disagree with the complaints, but at the same time, I felt it kept the story is really deeply involving. I thought it was really good, and it was not a disappointing sequel like I thought Modern Warfare 2 was, it basically turned it into a Michael Bay film, which is not really what people were expecting from Modern Warfare, I think. But yeah. But yes, nothing else really to say about that one. Love the hell out of it. If you like Mass Effect 1, it improves on basically every aspect of the game, and that's pretty much the review. I mean, if you didn't like Mass Effect 1, you're not going to like this one. The one I've been playing most now is Bioshock 2, because it's based on some of my favorite games from the old days, and I don't know why I play this game. I guess I try to fool myself into liking this game, and it's okay. I think the thing that really struck me about this one is how little has changed from the first game. It really didn't feel like a step up at all from the first Bioshock, and I haven't finished it yet. But even the story itself doesn't really seem that involving. It seems like a step back. The graphics are better, a little better. But, maybe I'm just being a big pile of no fun when it comes to Bioshock. But here's my problem. It doesn't really feel like it should be an action game. You know what I mean? It doesn't really feel like it should be a shooter. It kind of feels like it should be a more survival horror type game. And you don't really get that impression. You kind of get this much more fraggish, Doom style game, and I'm not really sure that's what they should be going for. They really should be working on the atmosphere, and you feel like it's almost there, but whoever designed this kind of missed the point. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I guess what I mean is it's the spiritual successor to System Shock, but it doesn't hold a candle to it. Like, I would still rather go back and play the original System Shock 1 or 2. To me, that they played that much more like a horror game, and much less like a shooter. There were shooting elements to it, and yeah, it played like kind of a first-person shooter, but you were much more fearful of the stuff that was going on. The villains were much more darker, godlike, frightening, and much more in the shadows. You don't really feel like you're just facing people in this one, in Bioshock. You're facing some guy, Andrew Ryan, potentially, and you're like, oh, well, he's kind of an asshole, but I'm not really afraid of this guy. I don't know. And the whole struggles that are raised with the kind of the Randist theory and the kind of the opposing viewpoint that arises in Bioshock 2 with Sophia Lamb, I think it is. That's kind of interesting, but they don't really do anything with it. I mean, all that struggle really took place before you got there. And you don't really have a say in it. You don't really have a choice. The moral system doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like, do you want to strangle children or do you not want to strangle children? I find that I've been playing it with the child strangling mode on. I've been kind of going that way, but I found in the first version it didn't really matter whether or not you choose the evil or the good version of it, because if you chose the evil version, you got more Adam, and if you chose the good version, you got less Adam. But every 3 children you saved, you got a reward of a ton of Adam, which kind of brought you up to the exact same level that the child stranglers did. And so I didn't really find much of a point there. Maybe you can tell me if there's much of a difference, but I doubt it. The powers have not evolved at all. It's really just the same load of powers, fire, freezing, electricity, whirlwind trap, swarm of bees. I actually don't think I see a single power that is at all different from anything else. I think maybe they leveled up a few powers. Like I've leveled up to like the chain lightning, which I still think is in the first version. The high level confuse, which actually I found hasn't worked for me at all. Maybe I'm just using it on the wrong enemies. I always tend to use it on the big brute dudes. There's like one new enemy, the big brute guys, and the big sisters. Okay, that's two, but not really much of a change. It's kind of hard to believe this is anything more than a map pack to the first version. I feel like the first Bioshock, there's not anything really wrong with that. I just miss System Shock so much. And this is not even close. It's remarkable to me how far off the mark they are when it comes to not being able to replicate the original System Shock. And I guess they don't want to. I guess they want to tell this kind of steampunky underwater story. And it's just not as interesting to me. I don't like strangling kids. It feels kind of transparent, in the sense that, who is really, how did Rapture get this far? It's kind of not hard to believe that Rapture descended into anarchy when they have vending machines that sell incinerate plasmids with a little informational video showing you setting people on fire, or a video that sells you a plasmid that turns machine gun turrets against your enemies. Like, people just they buy that? What do you expect them to do with that? Is there some kind of subtle message about gun control that I'm not aware of? Like, no wonder Rapture melted down. I don't know, I kind of felt like there should have been a lot of changes here, or even a change of venue entirely. Like, going back to Rapture, it just didn't seem natural, it didn't seem logical, and I'm not really sure what I'm doing here, You're playing this kind of deranged character who doesn't have a lot of memory. Big shocker. Just once I would love to play one of these games where I'm not playing an amnesiac psychopath who probably killed all the people in Rapture. That's not a spoiler. That's pretty much what you're told in the intro cinematic, but whatever. What else? I haven't been playing. I just installed something else, and I haven't tried it yet. But this one actually is interesting me far more than any of the other games I played, and that's Blood Bowl. I actually do own the board game, although I haven't played the board game but maybe twice. And this was years ago. I probably still have my original Blood Bowl team. I played a Skaven team that were, terrible. They were good. They would win one game, but if you ever played in, a league or something where you had to play, a marathon, they would just get beat up. They had no staying power, you know what I mean? They were good at hucking the ball downfield, but they weren't much beyond that. But it looks okay, and I got the PC version because I read that the Xbox 360 version sucked ass. But I'll let you know what I thought of this one. Let's see, anything else? Just working on a ton of reviews. Got a lot of stuff to write. So, going to get back to it. Been watching the Olympics. Not really being thrilled by it, but I'm doing my part for the country. I don't know. Anyway, that's my review of Bioshock. Underwhelmed. Very underwhelmed, much like my first experience with Bioshock, but figured you guys deserve to know. Anyway, have fun. See you next time.